Have you ever looked at something, maybe a Porsche 911, a perfectly designed interior, or even just a really well put together outfit, and thought, why does this look so good? Obviously, we all have different tastes, but there's actual psychology and science behind what makes certain things aesthetic. Why some designs feel timeless, why some shapes are universally pleasing, and why some brands have basically hacked our brains into loving them. I recently had two things occur that kind of prompted me to look into this a little bit more. The first being a visit to my city's Porsche center, where I found myself wondering what it was about these cars that just made them so aesthetically pleasing. And the second being a book that I started reading about interior design, which has helped me to better understand how our brains react to shapes, colors, and overall environments. Knowing how to make stuff look good is a really useful skill nowadays because you can pretty much apply it to anything, whether that thing be setting up a new room in your house, or trying to figure out the layout for your personal website, or even putting together an outfit for a first date. And I probably don't need to tell you that looking good also comes with feeling good. So today I want to take a deeper dive into how our brains are wired when it comes to aesthetics. Why is it that something that just looks really good has so much power over our brains and can occupy our thoughts? So the next time you look at something and think, dang, that really looks good, I want you to be able to figure out why and maybe see if you can apply some of that in your own life. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number one, why our brains love certain shapes. Let's start with a simple example. Why does a Porsche 911 look so good? The answer isn't just because it's expensive. Our brains are wired to react in certain ways when it comes to certain shapes, curves, and structures, even without us actually realizing it. Designers understand that different shapes can create different emotions. Curved shapes feel natural, organic, and inviting. We see them in river bends, rolling hills, and the human body, so our brains associate them with comfort and fluidity. Sharp, angular shapes feel precise, aggressive, and structured. Think of skyscrapers, knives, and race cars. They signal power and efficiency. And once you start looking for it, you start to see this dynamic pop up kind of everywhere in your day to day. Round logos like Starbucks are meant to feel more warm and inviting, while angular logos like with Tesla feel more futuristic and precise. Porsche leans heavily into curves because they feel dynamic and natural, which is why the 911 has such an iconic, timeless silhouette. Its rounded headlights and smooth flowing bodywork mimic natural forms, making it feel elegant. Now compare that to a Lamborghini, which is all sharp angles, flat surfaces, and aggressive edges. It's designed to feel like a fighter jet on wheels. Neither is better, but both trigger different responses. Soft lines come with elegance and flow. Sharp lines come with power and, to a certain extent, a bit of aggressiveness. So when you think about how to sort of do the structure of your own room, how to do the interior design, or even just when you're putting together an outfit, the lines that you're using and the sort of shapes that you are creating are going to affect the vibe that either you or your space give off. Number two, the psychology of design, or as I like to think of it, the way something looks doesn't just influence its aesthetic, it influences how we feel about it. Something like a Scandinavian inspired room has a very nice peaceful vibe to it, whereas something like this has a creepy liminal space feel to it. Our brains are good at trying to simplify things because even if you just quickly look around you, there's a lot of visual input coming through and your brain has to kind of filter through all of that. And so usually it'll look for certain cues and then make certain deductions based off of that. For example, if we see someone wearing a cowboy hat and leather boots, we're probably also going to make some assumptions on how they feel about horse riding or the great outdoors. Our brains are always trying to sort of pull as much information from as little input as possible so that it doesn't have to work so hard all the time. And this is where design comes in. Design takes advantage of these cues and sort of overemphasizes them so that our brains sort of naturally jump to certain conclusions. It sort of leads our thoughts into certain directions. When something is well designed, we don't have to think too hard about it. It just sort of clicks. That's why when you see a building like this, it's easy to assume that it's a coffee shop without seeing the logo, or when you see a car like this, to assume it's fast and expensive, even if you're not entirely sure what it is. On top of that, the inverse is also true, in that how we feel about something can influence the way we perceive it. In other words, how aesthetic it looks to us. For example, if you've always worn Nikes and a new pair of Adidas comes out along with a new pair of Nikes, you're going to think that the Nikes look a lot better because your feelings towards Nikes are very different than your feelings towards, for example, a pair of Adidas sneakers. That's why major brands from Rolls-Royce to Apple tend to evolve slowly. They don't massively change the aesthetic each time there's a new edition of something. Instead, they make small tweaks to make it feel a bit more modern, but they keep a lot of the same design cues that made you fall in love with it in the first place. They want to keep things familiar because there's an air of psychological comfort that comes with it, which, especially when you're trying to sell things to people, you want to make them feel at ease about their purchase. Like I said, design is as much about how we feel about something as how the thing actually looks. That's also why I'm personally a big advocate for investing into things that look nice and function well, especially when it comes to day-to-day items, because they can literally make you feel nice. They add to the overall vibe and aesthetic of your life, which is also why I've been working on a set of custom wallpapers to add a bit more flair to an object I use every day, i.e. my phone. If you want to check it out and support the channel along the way, feel free to head on over to Noah down below in the description. Finally, it's hard to talk about aesthetics without also talking about luxury, because luxury brands, more than anyone else, rely on aesthetic psychology to make us feel a certain kind of way and to draw us into big purchases. We are sort of conditioned to think that luxury, or at least the feeling of luxury, comes at a very high price. But if you understand aesthetic psychology, then you can implement a lot of those things into your day-to-day life to make life feel a little bit more luxurious without having to give away your life savings. I'm going to use the examples of Porsche, Apple, and Rolex, three very different types of products, but all considered to be expensive and associated with luxury. Their designs are not overly flashy, they don't overload you with details, and in their marketing usually implement something called negative space, essentially using emptiness or open space around an object to put emphasis on that object. Luxury isn't about adding more, it's about removing distractions so that the essential parts stand out, so that what is there feels very intentional. And this applies to everyday life as well. A well-organized room feels a lot more premium than one that's just filled with clutter, or a more minimalist wardrobe often feels a little bit more put together than one that's just filled with random stacks and piles of clothes that you don't even wear anymore. I'm sure you've experienced this as well, but even just taking the time to clean up your room or to clean up the inside of your car can often make it feel a lot more fresh, and in turn make you feel pretty good. It helps to create empty spaces in your life, not just physically, but also mentally. It's a lot harder to relax when you come home to a messy kitchen or a cluttered house. It's a lot harder to feel confident when you're sort of just in a random outfit, as opposed to something that feels a little bit more cohesive or intentional. Give yourself a bit more breathing room by keeping things simple. Now, I'm not advocating for extremely sterile and clinical spaces, but just a little bit of order can go quite a long way in making you feel a little bit more mentally at ease, and to make everything around you just feel a little bit more aesthetic and a little bit more nice. Even the biggest brands in the world understand that at the end of the day, whether you're selling sneakers or phones or cars, it's about making our brains go, that just looks and feels right. So in conclusion, why do certain things just look so good? Because someone somewhere understood that shapes influence the way we perceive things, how we feel about things can also influence how they look, and sometimes the best addition is no addition at all. Sometimes less is more. So the next time you see something and think, wow, that looks amazing, think a little bit more about why, and maybe there's something there that you can apply to your own life, whether it's your living space, the way you dress, or maybe just a general mindset that you can carry around with you. I hope this gave you a little bit more perspective on the world of aesthetics, but in the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.